So what I'll do in this part of the lecture is I will do a recap of the basic concepts of probability theory. Now why do we include this part in your syllabus in this module? It is because that whatever you have learned till now, whatever I have talked about in the previous lectures till probability, dealt with one particular sample. That is, whenever we've talked about the univariate association or even the bivariate association for that matter, which we will be talking about, we dealt with one particular sample, and that is what you will do when you do your actual research. But then that sample is drawn from one population, and that you get this combination of units or this particular sample from the population is only a matter of choice. So it's ultimately a matter of probability that you've landed up with this sample. You could have got a number of other samples. So then this very act of getting this sample, drawing this sample, is a probabilistic activity. So when you deal with the frequency distribution, for instance, then you have a given number of observations for one particular variable. Say you have up to n observations, and then when I plot the frequencies or the number of repetitions of each value, I have the frequencies. When I plot it and the total is n, so when I plot it in a graph paper, if I plot x here in this axis and frequency here, then I have a particular shape of the frequency distribution. Now then, all the units are actual units, observed units, which you have at hand. So this deals with one particular sample. Now here there is no uncertainty. This is given that you have this data set, there are n observations and there are specific values assumed by the variable. But when we are dealing with this fact that the sample has been drawn from a population, therein comes the role of probability. That is, it is then the fact that I have some x may assume some values with a certain chance. X may take the value x1, x may take the value x2, but then there is a certain probability associated with each value. So that is basically the reason why we are studying probability here, because after all your sample is a chance. It is that you've got this sample is a matter of chance. So when we deal with probability, we talk about certain basic concepts. We talked about, which I actually have talked about in class. So I'll just go through those concepts briefly. So you can go through Hamilton or you can go through some other texts. Now I'll mail you one other text which I find is a very good textbook. So you can refer to it and get familiar with the basic concepts. So then we talked of an experiment. We talked of its outcomes and its events and outcomes. And then we also talked about certain types of events. We talked about complementary events, we talked about mutually exclusive events, we talked about independent events, and then we also talked about the addition rule and the multiplication rule of probability, which I will discuss in a moment. So now first coming to the definition of probability. Now we denote events by capital letters. Suppose A is an event, then what is the probability that I get A? It is the number of cases favorable to A divided by the total number of cases. So when you suppose the experiment is of tossing a coin, so there are two cases possible. You either get a head or a tail. So what is the probability of getting a head when you toss a coin? You may get a head or a tail. So the number of evens favorable is 1 and the total number of evens in the denominator is 2. Now there are two definitions. This is the classical definition and there is also a modern definition which is known as the relative frequency definition of probability. Now what does this definition say? It says that if you conduct this experiment a number of times, that is a large number of times, if you keep on tossing a coin, then if that number of times you toss a coin becomes sufficiently large, then the proportion of heads that you actually observe will be close to half. Will actually settle at half. So that's the relative frequency definition of probability, and the relative frequency definition actually converges with the classical definition of probability. So now let us talk about mutually exclusive events and independent events. Now as you would remember when we discussed the chi-squared testing, which was the test to ascertain whether there is a statistically significant association between two categorical variables, we use the chi-square test, and the very chi-square test is based on this notion of independence. What is an independent event and what are independent events actually? So that's what the chi-square test is based on, this notion of independence. So now let us start with some examples. Suppose you roll a die. So what happens? What are the likely events? You may get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. So small n is 6, and now depending on your event you will get the denominator, you will get the numerator. The denominator, if you roll a die once, is 6. Now so what is it then? Suppose the event is getting an even number. Getting an even number. A is the event which denotes this. So what is probability A? It's half, because there are 3 even numbers. Now suppose B is the event that you get an odd number. Now so A and B are mutually exclusive, because you cannot simultaneously get an even number and an odd number when you roll a die once, which is your experiment. Your experiment being rolling a die, you cannot get A and B simultaneously happening. So A and B are known as mutually exclusive. Now we come to another concept, that is independent events. Now before getting into independent events, there is another concept which we need, which is known as conditional probability. Now what is conditional probability? Suppose A is an event, we stick to the same experiment of rolling a die. Suppose A is an event that you get 2 and B is an event that you get an even number. So then what is probability A given B? What happens here is, given that you get an even number, so the total number of events are 1, 2, 3. The total number of outcomes possible are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So you get a 2, that's 1. But you know that you already know this getting 1 is conditional on the even B, that you have got an even number. So then the total number of possible cases is 3 now. So what happens? Your universe is now restricted to the condition, that is the, in this case, the event of getting an even number. Now what about the probability of the joint occurrence of A and B? You get 2 and you get an even number. That's 1 by 6. So we had this multiplication rule which told us that this will always be equal to, if you can remember, we dealt with this in class a lot. This would always be equal to the A given B into BB. That is the product of the conditional probability and the event on which the condition was based. The unconditional probability of the event in the denominator. So what is this then? We have it as 1 by 3. Now what is probability B? As we know, probability B would be equal to, getting an even number is half, because there are 3 even numbers. So that's equal to 1 by 6. You can just verify it with any of the examples. This is always true. This is a mathematical truism, that the probability of the joint occurrence of 2 events would be equal to the unconditional probability into the conditional probability. Now conditional probability, when you look at it, you look at the denominator here, so you will have the unconditional probability of that particular event here in the second part. So for mutually exclusive events, what would happen? For mutually exclusive events, if you just remember the Venn diagram, that's the simplest way to remember this. If you have 2 mutually exclusive events, now this is the sample space, you have 2 mutually exclusive events like this. Now if the events are not mutually exclusive, suppose A and C are not mutually exclusive, then you would have a part which is the intersection. So for mutually exclusive events, this joint occurrence or this intersection is actually the null set. There is no occurrence of this kind of area. So what happens here then? For mutually exclusive events, the A and C is equal to 0. In other words, the A given C would also be 0. Given that you got an even number, the probability that you get an odd number when you roll a die, that's 0. So these are mutually exclusive events. Why is this part 0? Because probability C being, if C is not an impossible event, then PC would always be positive. Any probability would be greater than 0 as long as the event is not impossible. So then for mutually exclusive events, we know that this is 0 and this is also 0. Now what about independent events then? How do we define independent events? Independent events, PA given B, would be the same as PA. Mind you, this would not be equal to 0 if PA is not 0, which would mean that if A is not an impossible event, then PA given B would not be 0. If A is not an impossible event, then this would always be positive. So what would we have then? The multiplication rule now would become PA and B. This is the multiplication rule for independent events. This would be equal to the conditional probability and the unconditional probability would be equal. So we would have the probability of joint occurrence of two events as the product of the two unconditional probabilities. So this is the multiplication rule for independent events. Now this is the very rule which we will focus on when we deal with the chi-square testing, or for this bivariate association between categorical variables. That's the most important test. So this is the rule which chi-square test hinges on. Okay. So now from this it would immediately follow that independent events cannot be mutually exclusive, are not mutually exclusive. It automatically follows from what we've done, because for mutually exclusive events this would be 0, and as long as A and B are not impossible events, this can never be possible. So independent events cannot be mutually exclusive. Now what you can get, some questions you may get on that give examples of independent events, give examples of events that are neither mutually exclusive nor independent, give examples of events that are mutually exclusive, and so on. So you could get questions like this. So here if we look at this, let's just discuss some of the examples, and I'll give you the PPT as well. I've included those here. So yeah, I would do that. So now coming to the examples, mutually exclusive events I've already said that say getting an odd and getting an even, getting an odd number and getting an even number when you roll a die, getting a head and a tail. These are impossible things happening together. These are mutually exclusive. Now coming to independent events. One example I would discuss here is that the experiment is that I toss a coin and you roll a die. So I toss a coin and you roll a die. I toss a coin, you roll a die. Now if we use the tree diagram, that would be very easy to explain this here. So what are the possible events, what are the possible outcomes that may take place? What is n? The sample space would then comprise of so I may get a head, and then I may also get a tail. So there would be 6 nodes from here, that is H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Similarly for from the tail, again there would be 6 nodes originating from here. So tail 1, tail 2, tail 3, tail 4, tail 5 and tail 6. So n is then 12. Now let's say that the events are I get a head, A is I get a head, and B is you get a 6. So what is the probability of A? Probability A is half. Now what is probability B? Probability B is you get a 6, you get a 6 here, you also get a 6 here. So that's 2 by 12, so that's 1 by 6. Now what is PA given B? Given that you've got a 6, what is the probability that I get ahead out of these two? So in the denominator I have 2. Now what is the probability that I get ahead? That's only one case out of these two, so that's half. Now incidentally, this is also equal to probability A. So this is the condition for an independent evens. You can check that PA and B, that is the joint occurrence of both, which is this, I get a head and you get a 6, that's this case. So the probability is 1 by 12. So that is equal to probability A into probability B. So these are independent evens. You could stop here because the conditional probability and the unconditional probability are equal. This is enough to show that the evens are independent. And you can also show this, that you may be asked to verify the multiplication rule for independent evens, giving an example. So this is what you can do then. Now I come to the last part of it, which is say an example of an event which is neither mutually exclusive nor independent. So what is an example of that? You can think of your own example. I would just give you just one example, but you can think of many others. You can think of your own experiment and then think of events and try and find out events which are neither mutually exclusive nor independent. So one would be, suppose I roll a die. Now A is an event that I get an even number, and B is an event that I get a prime number. So the outcomes are again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, which gives me that in the denominator I have 6, n is 6, the total number of possible cases. Now even number, we have 3 even numbers, and which are the prime numbers. This is a prime number, this is a prime number, and this is a prime number, and again this is a prime number. So we have 4 prime numbers and 3 even numbers. So what is probability A? That's half, because it's 3 out of 6, so it comes to half. Now what is probability B? That's 4 by 6, which is 1, 2, 3 and 4. So 4 by 6 would mean 2 by 3. Now what about PA and B? That's just this. So it's 1 by 6. Now is it equal to the product? So it's not 0. So not mutually exclusive. Now are these events independent? Had these events been independent, then this would be equal to probability A into probability B, but that's not the case, because that's equal to 1 by 2 into 2 by 3, which is equal to 1 by 3. Therefore A and B are not independent. So this is an example where we have 2 events which are neither independent nor mutually exclusive. And again, this is just an example. You can think of your own examples and your own experiments. So I would stop here, and we use this concept of independence to study the notion of independence in association, bivariate association. So particularly between two categorical variables, the application is very direct there because we use the chi-square test. Now how do we test the association between two variables? Now if the two variables are continuous, we use the OLS regression. That's the most common thing. Now I'll just mention this because I will start with hypothesis testing in the next class. So bivariate association. Now if I talk about if the two variables, bivariate meaning two variables, so this is the association between two variables. So if I talk of two continuous variables, if both the variables are continuous, then what do? I use a scatter plot first to graphically examine the kind of relationship, the pattern of relationship between the two variables. Then I do an OLS regression. This method has its own limitations. It is based on certain assumptions that need to be satisfied to execute this kind of method. But this is the most common tool in this case when the two variables are continuous. Now if the two variables are categorical, what do we do? To test if the association between two categorical variables is statistically significant, what we do is we can use box plots across the categories. No, if we have two categorical variables, then what do? Across the categories of one variable, we may have bar diagrams for the other variable. Bar diagrams denoting the percentage of each category. So suppose one is sex and the other is, say, grades completed. So for males, I have a kind of bar diagrams for, say, no education, primary, secondary, and so on. And for females, again, I have the respective graphs, so I can compare it simultaneously. So that's the graphical tool. Now to test the association, the numerical method would be to use the chi-square testing. That's the first thing to do when you have two categorical variables. You can also, there are other methods of regression which we do not cover in this course. Now if one variable is continuous and the other variable is categorical, then what do? We can plot box plots for categories of the categorical variable. That's one thing, and we can compare the box plots together. We can also do the stem and leaf plot, which I discussed in my previous lecture, using a common stem, and then the leaves would differ for the categories, but that's again if the variable is a binary variable. If it has two categories, we can do that. Then there are methods of regression as well. If your if one of the variables is continuous and the other is categorical. Now depending on which side you put your variable in, that is if your dependent variable, the variable which you want to explain, and you have been familiar with these terms when you were taught the OLS regression. So if your dependent variable is categorical, then the method of regression which you use, there are some methods to do that for limited dependent variables. So the very familiar kind of regressions we use are the logic regression or the probit regression, depending on the functional form. So that's all about it, and in the next lecture I would discuss hypothesis testing.